Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Vintage Motocross Radio. I'm your host, Joe Abadi. Today's show is made possible with the help of our sponsors, Vintco, Keep the Ride Going, Nightmare Racing, the best reproduction Kawasaki plastic on the planet, Full Circle Racing, your one-stop shop for rims, spokes, lacing, and truing. I also would like to thank AMSOIL, the first in synthetic oil since 1973. Preston Petty Products, the legend continues. And our latest sponsor, I am proud to announce, is Motion Pro. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Kirk Benke for help putting this together between Jim Holley and myself. My guest this morning has been involved in motocross since the early 1970s and was the 80cc National Mini Bike Champion in 1976. In 1985, he was the first ever World Supercross Champion, as well as the 1989 Ultracross Champion. He has trained racers from the Yamaha factory in Japan and has himself raced in countries such as Guam, India, Spain, South Africa, Australia, and Indonesia. After his racing career ended, he continued to give back to the sport of motocross in a variety of ways, and he can still be seen and heard on the Supercross pre-race show, Race Day Live. It's my pleasure to have as my guest this morning, Mr. Jim Holley. Hollywood, are you there?
I'm here, Joe. Man, what an introduction. You know, you kind of touched on everything. It's amazing on how long I've been around and able to stay around. And my frequent flyer mountain aisles, I forgot all those countries I went to.
I think I may have even missed a few. You know, I didn't even count Canada. So, but you have certainly been around for a lot of years and traveled a lot of places, Jim. And I always ask my guests, I always like to go back as far as I can. And in your situation, it was your dad who was a nationally rated flat track racer. He was a well-known tuner as well. At what age did you become interested in your dad's racing, and how did it influence you?
I mean, probably when I started walking or getting on those little plastic motorcycles you could push around with your feet in the backyard. You know, I was born into racing. Like you said, my dad was a national dirt track guy, and then he did a lot of Grand Prix like Baymare, Elsinore, Hopetown, you know, a lot of the Grand Prix out west, you know, when the Europeans first started coming over, DeCoster and Joel Robert and Torsten Hallman, those guys, they rode Hopetown. And I was a kid, you know, just running around in the pits and everything. But I mean, I have some pictures in my library of me sitting up on top of a 650 Triumph, you know, probably 5 years old. So I mean, I was just involved with it from a long time. I mean, even from a standpoint of when Bob Hansen, he was my dad's mechanic, and he just passed away here a couple weeks ago. And I called him my uncle, but you know, he's not blood related. But anyhow,
he's that close, sure.
He was. They were putting together a bike for my dad, and they couldn't find a bolt, and I had swallowed it, and I was in the garage, and I turned blue, and they picked me up and upside down and shook me a little bit, and the bolt came out for the rocker cover on the Triumph, you know, and away they went, you know, finished up the bike, and I mean, I was just kind of hanging around, you know, motorcycles since I was young.
Yeah, it's always been a part of your life, and you know, my earliest recollection of you racing when I was growing up as a kid is I remember you in minicycle magazines, like around 1972, and you and Wardy and I guess it was Mike Brown. So many kids that went on to have successful careers were all a part of that minicycle magazine thing, and you became a mini bike national champion. But I think a lot of people remember you on that PK Racing team or the XR75. How did that come about?
That was, I had a sponsorship, Paul Cates. His mom and dad owned Hacienda Honda, and Paul, PK stand for Paul Cates, and he wanted to have his own race team, so he got together with my dad, and, you know, they had the dynos and everything down there in Hacienda, and that's how that came together. Bobby Jones was on the team with me, and I mean, there was a lot of great kids, you know, that went in different directions, you know, like, you know, I remember racing against Wayne Rainey at Trojan Speedway, and he went to road racing, you know, and Kelly and Sean Moran, Speedway guys, Lance King, they all went that, Ricky Miller. I mean, there's just a vast variety of mini bike kids back then, you know, that when we started out in Indian Dunes, and everybody went in their little directions. I was fortunate enough. I lived just right down the street from Jack Haley, and John Haley was a dirt track.
Sure.
When the Houston Astrodome, Eddie Mulder, all those guys, Terry Doris, Dusty Coppage, all those guys, Tim Harris. I was introduced to all that, as a young age, and I thought maybe I was going to go to the dirt track, but I didn't go that way. My dad said that, the dirt tracks, they were a little bit fast and a little bit dangerous, he thought, and then there was more money in motocross, and then, of course, Supercross started in 72, so, we went in that direction.
Now, until I actually started to do some research, and I don't know if I have this right or not, but I thought Marty Tripes was the youngest rider to race professionally. I discovered that you had a pro license at 14. Where did you race?
Well,
or am I?
That's absolutely true. Marty had an AMA pro license, and he was just under the age of 16 when he did the Super Bowl of motocross back in 72, and he won it. But like a lot of us younger kids, we were mini bike pros. So like CMC, California, had the different sanctioning bodies out here, AME, CRC, all these clubs out here that you could be a mini bike kid and race the 80cc class, and you could get, they had a purse for us, so you get a payback, however many guys entered. So that's where the license was. It wasn't an AMA pro, but yes, we were racing for money. Under 16. A lot like some of these other kids, nowadays that race Loretta Lynn's, and I'm talking about the Ryder D. Franciscos, the Jet Reynolds, guys like this, and even when James Stewart was riding amateur ranks and all these guys, the factories pay these guys in one way or the other to keep them locked up to, being on a Kawasaki or whatever. So, they don't get their pro license until they're 16, AMA pro, but they're still making money at a young age, and that kind of all started back in the mid 70s with us. We were racing for money, but we didn't hold an AMA pro license, but we did hold a pro license with CMC or CRC or AME.
Now, who are some of the other guys you grew up with there that were racing bikes at those times? You mentioned a few of the older flat track guys, but I got to imagine that Jeff Ward had to be in the mix there and a few other guys too.
Oh, yeah, Wardy, me and him, we've been around a long time. Jeff Ward, Willie Simons, Brian Myerscough, Mark Murphy out of Florida. I mean, there is just a vast variety of riders. You mentioned Mike Brown, Kenny Alexander, Mike Rosen, Chad McQueen, Steve McQueen's son, and Terry McQueen. She raced with us. Just a lot of guys coming up through the ranks that were here in California. It was a different time back then. I mean, it was. I remember one time I went out to, and my dad was a real stickler as far as making sure the bike was prepared, because he was a plastering contractor and he'd have to work, and my job was to wash the bike, get the air filters. He did the motors or whatever, and my job was to take my equipment and make sure all my equipment was when we went to the races. And I remember one time we went to Indian Dunes, and I forgot my riding gear. and he goes, well, guess you're not riding tonight. And I started crying. I go, well, why, Dad? Why? I can borrow gear. Nope. Your job was to make sure that you had your riding gear, so we're not borrowing gear, and we're going home. And we went home, and I never forgot my riding gear ever after that.
Ever after that, huh?
Tough love.
And that's what it took a lot of times. You were the first guy to ride one of the white Mugen Hondas in 1980, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But there had to be some gaps that I wanted to fill in between, the 80cc mini bike days and that 1980 era where you hit the 125s. What happened between the XR75s and the 125s?
Well, what had happened is, when I was riding for Paul Cates and PK on the XR75s, the XRs were at their limit. They couldn't build them anymore, and the YZs, the two-strokes, it just came in. So we had actually switched to a Yamaha YZ 80. And I remember back before that, there was a guy named Bill Butler, Fun and Fast, and he had sponsored me also on a motorcycle prior to PK. So I got back on a two-stroke, that was so after that era in the mini bike days in the 80cc, then Yamaha, and you remember Suzuki and a couple other manufacturers, they made a 100cc class.
Yes.
So I rode a lot of the 100cc pro classes here in Southern California, and locally out west here. So I did a lot of that before I transitioned up to the 125 because, I don't care if it's today's era or back then. Transitioning from an 80cc to a 125, that's a big jump.
Yeah.
I like, having to say, you can ride 100cc for, 6 months and get a little bit more muscle on you. The same way like all these manufacturers have that, they had a 105 class too where we had mini Elsinores and you could ride those. It was a sleeve down Honda Polkates and my dad came up with that idea and, put smaller wheels on it, so that was another class I was able to ride also. But nowadays they have the big wheel 85s, and Honda at one time came up with that 154 stroke. So I like that transition, and I don't like a kid going on an 85 now and then transitioning up to a 250F. That's way too big of a jump, and I'm really happy that Yamaha and some of the other manufacturers have a 125 two-stroke because I think that they need to be on that, just like you see Talon Volan doing. He's riding the 125 class.
Yes.
On his KTM. I think you need that. So during that period before I jumped up in 79 and won the Golden State Series championship, I was doing a lot of the 100cc stuff around here. So.
What bike were you riding for the Golden State Series on the 125? Yamaha?
125 Yamaha. Okay. Yeah.
Now,
and that was interesting because every young kid probably listening in or people, I'll never forget that when I was off my mom and dad's insurance company, and I was making money. I was racing the 100 pro class.
Yeah.
And I didn't get insurance. And I go, I don't need any insurance. Well, I went out to the local race and I crashed. A foot peg got me in the leg and ended up having to get some stitches and had to go to the hospital. And I had to pay out of my own pocket, $300 or $400. Back then, that was a lot of money.
Sure.
So after that, I had to get insurance, But I'll never forget that story because my mom and dad said, okay, you want to be stubborn-headed, go ahead. And sure enough, the next race, I had to go get stitches.
Jimmy, after that Yamaha 125 ride, some things really lined up with the stars for you, and you wound up getting a Mugen ride, a 125 white bike from Al Baker. How did that come about?
Well, what had happened on that is I went into Kenny Clark's office the start of the 79 season. My mom and dad didn't have a lot of money, like I said, and we went into Kenny Clark, which was the team manager for the Yamaha factory racing back when, he had Glover and Mike Bell and Bob Hanna and all those guys, and said, look, I want to ride the Nationals this year. And I had moved to Henderson, Nevada to get away from Southern California, a lot of distractions here, and I really wanted to focus. And so I went into Kenny's office, and he says, hey, man, you go out and prove yourself in the Golden States, which back then the Golden States were really big. I mean, 40 guys on the starting line and all that. So he said, I'll give you bikes and parts and go out and prove yourself, and I'll hook you up with either LOP, Lorenz Offner out of Illinois, or Chuck Tanner, Moto X Fox. They were running a team. Donnie Cantalupi was on that team, a couple other guys, Turner and guys like that. So I told my dad, I said, look, I don't want to just go out and finish second or third. That's proving yourself, but if I win this championship, I'm going to be hooked up with a ride for the Nationals, So I went out and I ended up winning the series, and Johnny O'Mara was riding it, and Glover, a lot of top name guys were riding it, and ended up winning it. And, I'd have to leave, Friday after work because I was working construction in Nevada and then with my Uncle Bob. And then after we would work, we'd train and work out and stuff. And then I'd drive back to LA, race on Sunday night, drive back to Henderson, Nevada, and just outside Las Vegas, and work all week. So I was really putting in the work. So I won the championship. I go back into Kenny's office, me and my dad, And I said, okay, Kenny, who are you going to hook me up with, man? Is it going to be LOP or Moto X Fox? I'm really excited, And he said, he goes, man, I got some bad news. Yeah, well, what's the bad news? And he goes, well, I couldn't get you on. Their budgets are already spent and this and that. And I'm just like kind of heartbroken at this point.
Of course.
And he goes, I also got some other bad news. I go, how bad can it get? I go, you just told me I can't go out on the national circuit. I'm going to have to mow lawns, work construction, save my money at least to make the West Coast rounds, So he said, well, the bikes and stuff I gave you, I need those back too. Now here's Yamaha, and I love Yamaha. I mean, I've been a Yamaha guy, and I still work with Yamaha, and they pulled everything out from underneath me after I just won the championship for them.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what to do. So Tad O'Connell ran the engineering department with Mark Porter and the guys, and Don Dudak and stuff. And they backdoored me a couple Yamahas to start out the season. Started out the season, had some good finishes. I think 10th or whatever. And then Johnny O'Mara broke his back in a car accident, screwing around in a car and ran it off the freeway. So Al Baker came to me and he says, look, Johnny's hurt. And I'm just starting up I started this new team, and I need a rider. And I want you to ride the Mugen for me. And I said, okay. I go, what's the deal? He says, well, we'll take care of all your expenses and, bonuses or whatever, and we can't pay you a salary. We don't have money, but we'll give you, Tom Halverson was the mechanic for Johnny. Tommy will be your mechanic and all this and blah, blah, blah. The next national was in Southwick, Massachusetts. And he says, you go back there and you prove yourself and you run in the top 10, we'll continue on. So I proved myself. I think I got 8th or 9th overall that day. And so everything was good. And he says, now when Johnny comes back, Johnny needs the white bike because they only had one. And you'll ride a production Honda with the Mugen kit on it. I said, yeah, that's fair. Johnny's the number one guy you hired first, and he had a back injury. I'm filling in just like Brock Tickle's filling in for, guys at Yamaha now that got injured, Aaron Plessinger. So I said, okay, cool. So we're getting the bikes ready for the next national. Tommy's working on the white bike for Johnny, and I'm working on the red bike for me. And Al Baker calls me up, and he says, "Hey Jim, I got to come over. I got to get that red bike for Johnny to practice on." And Al was running on a shoestring budget. He didn't have enough bikes, and Honda started with Hirohito Honda. His son started Mugen, so
yes.
They had some connections, but they didn't have the budget, like the factory guys did. So anyhow, I said, well, you can come over, but you're not taking that motorcycle, man, because now you got to remember, earlier in the year, Kenny Clark just took all my motorcycles. I didn't have nothing to go, and now here again, I proved myself for Mugen, and I'm running, top 10s and stuff, and I'm getting this bike out there, and now you say you're going to take another bike away from me? That's not going to happen.
Now, where are you guys working on the bikes, Jimmy? You're at your house, or where are you?
We're at my dad's garage in Northridge, California.
Okay.
Yeah, we use that, and he had everything in there, lathes and drill presses and, parts washers, everything like that. So
sure.
Anyhow, Al comes over and he's in the driveway, and I go, Al, you step one foot in this garage, man, to grab that motorcycle. There's going to be a problem here. And sure enough, he stepped in, and I clocked him, and he went flying over the parts washer, and I was ready to pounce on him again. My mother came outside. Jimmy, you're going to kill him. And I go, well, he's not taking that bike, Mom. I can tell you that right now.
Did he?
You can, true story. I mean, you can ask Tom Alverson if anyone knows Tommy, or you run into him. He works for Yamaha in the road racing department. But I think Al got a lot of respect, and I had to fight to keep my ride. I mean, that was literally, I had to punch the guy to keep my bike.
So you wound up keeping the bike, Jimmy, and racing it that year?
Absolutely, and finished out the year, and I finished in, I think, 9th overall that year on the red Mugen. A couple rounds were on the white one, but the rest of them were on the I think the first 2 were on Yamahas, then the 2 or 3 on the white bike, and then I finished out the rest of the 6 on the, because there was 12 nationals like there are nowadays. Mm-hmm. And like I said, finished up 9th, and then that was it. I was done. I fulfilled my obligation. I was just, hired to do those nationals, and I did it. And then I had nothing again at the end of 1980. I was out, didn't have nothing after winning the Golden State, finishing top 10 and the 125 my rookie year. I just so then Can-Am approached me to ride in 1981 for him, and I took that deal.
Now Can-Am in '81, I mean they didn't have a contender on the payroll since Jimmy Ellis in '76 probably. So
well, they did have the year before Jimmy Weiner. Jimmy Weiner rode one, and Can-Am is out of Valcourt, Canada.
Yeah.
And on the East Coast, and they got with Andy Colby, who was a successful Honda and Can-Am dealer here in Southern California out of Woodland Hills.
Yeah.
And they ran the shop out of Woodland Hills. And Jimmy rode for him the year before, and then I don't know what happened with, I don't know if Jimmy, I think he retired or something, so they wanted to keep the program going, and they hired me on. And so that worked out good. My dad was able to be my mechanic also, and we got the chance. The shop was just, 5 miles away from, where I lived at and everything. So everything was good. But the only thing is, like you had mentioned, Joe, that Jimmy Ellis, that bike was stellar back in the mid-'70s.
Yeah.
He was winning supercrosses and everything, but the development of it stopped. And the Japanese really, went forward after, when Hannah was riding in, 77, 78, 79, their development of their motorcycles, all the manufacturers, Yamaha, Honda, Suzuki, Cowie, went up, and Can-Am stayed the same. Well, the bike that I had, it really wasn't ready for Supercross, and it needed a lot of work. So I was racing, and I was also developing that motorcycle as we went on. I remember at one time in where was it? The Kingdome in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Hannah came up to me and says, "Man, I like following you. In practice." I'm saying, "Well, why would you follow me, man? I'm a rookie. You're." He goes, "Well, because your bike's so low, man. When you go through the whoops, it knocks them down for me." And I'm thinking, shit.
The frame was.
I'm a rookie, and this guy I looked up to, Bob Hanna, he's following me around, and I'm thinking he's going to give me a compliment. Well, it wasn't, it was just, and that's how Bob was. Bob's a great guy, but, he just told it like it was. Yeah, man, your bike's too low, man. And it was. It was way too low. It was dragging everywhere, and so we told Can-Am that, hey, we needed a new bike to, we got to get that cradle to the center of the motor. We got to get it up, at least a couple of 2-3 inches. So it was the Supercross in Kansas City, and we were excited. I remember going with my dad in the box truck and going out to the airport. Flying Tigers flew a new bike down from Valcourt, Canada. Jeff Smith was up there and helping out and stuff. So we got it, and when we uncrated it, we looked at it, measured. Yeah, great, man. Now we got this thing up, and that's cool. We got the shocks laid down like we wanted to. We got a lot of things that we asked for. They had done for us. Only one thing:
What's
couldn't
that?
kickstart the motorcycle. They brought the frame up in the motor, but the Kickstarter wouldn't kick, so I had to bump start it like a dirt tracker. And I remember getting in the main event that night and stalling it, and the track was real mushy that night. I think it had rained a little bit earlier, a couple days earlier, and it was really a soft type of a track. And I couldn't bump start it. I couldn't get a bump started because you can't have outside assistance. My dad's over in the mechanics area, and I'm trying to bump this stuff, and it's just. It was just things like that the whole year, and after 6 months they said, hey, we'll pay out your contract, but we're done racing, and so I was left without a ride again in '81 halfway through, and then I went back to Yamaha, and they backdoored me some 500s and stuff, and I was able to go out and ride the 500 Nationals, I believe, that year in '81 or 82, I can't remember. Maybe I stayed 81 locally again, just to kind of regroup and get ready for the next season or whatever.
From 82 on, Jimmy, you had a really good ride, a really good, some really great results with Yamaha from 82 and 83 and 84. And, just let me give you a little list here of what was going on. I mean, in 82, you finished 13th in the 500 Nationals. In 83, you were the CMC Night National Champion. You also finished 9th in 83 in the 250 Nationals. And you finished 8th in the 250 Nationals in 84. 85, you're the Golden State Series champion. And you won something that was completely new, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you about this. You won the Rodeo Cup Supercross Championship, also known as the World Supercross Championship. What?
Yeah, those were good years, and those were on Yamahas and supported by Yamaha. After that 500cc, then I was able to, instead of getting backdoor bikes, I was officially getting motorcycles and parts and help, and that's about when the YZ program came into effect, YZ Bucks, so I was getting bonuses and stuff. I mean, I think at one point in one of those years, I made close to $60,000 in YZ money, which was really great. And I remember Daytona one year, I finished up 4th, and Glover was 3rd, and we went to dinner afterwards, and he was complaining that I made more money than he did that day with bonuses and everything. I go, how can you compare that, Brock? I said, you're on a salary, man. I'm not on a salary. I'm just on bonuses, and whatever I win, I get from the AMA. And I had some outside sponsors and stuff. Accurate Container Corporation, biggest corrugating box company in the United States at that time, and O'Neill and Arai, PJ1, all these guys, Scott. So I had a good program that I set up. Jerry Ireland, Haas was helping me out, and my dad was still flying back and forth because he had to run a construction business. So, we were out on the road. But yeah, those were good years, 82, 83, 84, and 85. And like you said, the 85 World Supercross Championship was nice because that Rodeo Cup was the first one. I remember another rider from Holland, John Vanderberg, me and him were battling back and forth, and the final round was at the LA Coliseum. But they were in Sweden, Spain, I think Germany. There was a few rounds in Europe, and then the final round was in the Coliseum. And I think I finished 5th that night. Mike Goodwin was promoting that race, and he had a 2-wave starting gate where 20 guys were on the. If you won your heat race, then you were on the back starting gate. He was just, it was hokey. He tried it one time and it didn't really work. But guys were leading, and on the last lap, they'd go up the peristyle and kind of like go out of sight or something, or tip the bike over and keep it running and let a couple guys pass them. And so they would start on the front row, and I'm thinking, well, that's not working. This program's not working. But anyhow, I got 5th that night. Wrapped up the championship, which was good, and John was, coming from Holland, not a lot of Supercross going on, but he was, and he won world championships, in the 250 class and stuff, and we still remain friends today and talk to him every once in a while.
Jim, in that Rodeo Cup thing where they actually started the fastest guys on the second row, didn't Goodwin have some kind of thing going on where he was paying those guys for how many people they passed?
No, that was the...
or was that the Mickey Thompson thing?
Mickey Thompson, yeah. That was, and we'll get into that. That was a whole different series, and that was after my racing career. But no, he didn't pay anybody. It's just that, if you won your heat race, you were on the back row. Well, obviously, how can you start on the back row and come through that caliber of riders and win? So they were sandbagging and starting on the front row, getting 3rds or 4ths or whatever, transferring directly out of the heat, but they would have to be on the front row and everything. I think the only one that didn't do it that night was Ricky Johnson. He won his heat, and he started on the back row and stuff, and he was still riding for Yamaha at the time, and that was his last ride on a Yamaha, by the way, and then he went to the Hondas. But, they like to try different things, just like, Feld tries it nowadays. They'll have
the Joker lane.
Or Davey Coombs, like MX Sports. They race on Saturdays now instead of Sundays. And, so anyhow, that's they always like to try to, people don't like change, but, how can you know if it's better if you don't try different things? It's just like developing a motorcycle. If you don't change the cylinder or change the shock or that, how do you know if the bike can improve? And
right.
And that's why a lot of people, Mike Goodwin wanted to, try this change just to kind of change it up, but it didn't work.
Jimmy, let's talk about your training regimen a bit. what you did, and if you'd ever had a personal trainer, or were you just so self-motivated that you just always trained yourself? How did you keep yourself in shape other than riding throughout your career?
Well, I was pretty self-motivated. A lot of guys didn't tell me, what I had to do, but I did go to Dean Miller a few times, training for Brad Lackey when Brad won the world championship.
Sure.
And a good friend of Brad's, and I flew up to Northern California and went on the training stuff, just to kind of get a basis and see where I'm at. And Dino could tell me, like, hey man, you need to pick this up, you need to get your heart rate up at this point. And this is all in the beginning. I mean, nowadays it's all scientific, it's crazy. But and I had a lot of family and friends that would help me out or something. I would go for a run or something, and I didn't like running around a high school, and I'll never forget it. I mean, every 4 laps is a mile, and you do 20 laps, it's 5 miles. I just hated that. It was a repetitive thing, just going in a circle. So I would take off, and I'd just go for a run for 45 minutes, and I'd call somebody, and I'd have to come down to a payphone because obviously we didn't have cell phones with us. I'd come down to the streets out of the hills, and I'd call someone, hey man, can you pick me up, man? I put in my run, and I could never run and come back, on the same way. And sometimes I got some big loops in, which was kind of cool or whatever. I remember one time I ran down Reseda Boulevard, a main boulevard, and I kept running and running and running and running and put my time in, and I went, oh man, how am I getting to get back? Well, I put a couple of quarters in my my Dolphin running shorts or whatever they were, and I took the bus back. But no, I mean, I was always strong physically. I needed to run more. That's where my weakness was, and stretching. I mean, I could bench press a lot. I could do a lot of sit-ups. My legs were strong, all that stuff. I mean, I used to sit up against the wall in some of those training books like Dino had, and I'd sit up there and, I think 12 minutes, without a chair, just to back up against the wall and stand there and watch TV. And I think a lot of guys that, I've trained in the past and stuff, Japanese guys or whatever, everyone's got an excuse. Well, there's no excuse. I mean, if the gym's closed like now with COVID and all that stuff, you can make your own gyms, But I used to go out on the sand piles and shovel like a sack of cement's 94 pounds, pick one of those up, crack it open, put it in a mixer because my dad was a plastering contractor. So, and each sack of cement gets 25 shovels of sand. So, and he was up on the gun, and he'd be the gun meaning the nozzle, shooting on an apartment building, putting the cement on the side of the walls, and he'd run that thing third gear wide open. I'll never forget, just you'd hear that thing just running, man, and the mud's pumping. I'm trying to keep up, and I remember there was an old African American boy, Bubbles, and he was 60, man. He goes, man, Jimmy, your old man's gonna kill us out here in the sand pile. He goes, but I got a trick for him. I go, yeah, what's that, Bubbles? He goes, watch this. So he would get a rock, and he would put it in the hopper after we dumped the mud into the hopper to pump, right?
Yeah.
Well, that rock would go up through the hose upstairs, and there was an orifice on the end of the nozzle. And that rock would hit the orifice, and it would push the orifice out so you didn't have that spray anymore. So my old man would have to shut the thing off, and he'd have to have someone climb down the scaffold, find the orifice, and put, yeah, now we get a break. Oh, man, my old man, he would come unglued because there's screens on those mixers when you drop the mud so the rocks get in there,
Yeah.
Because you're not getting the production. He'd scream at me and Bubbles, and he'd say, yeah, your old man's going to give me a heart attack. I don't care if he yells at me. Sure enough, he'd yell at us and whatever. And then I remember a couple times that, and my old man was really pissed. And it wasn't it was my fault, but I didn't do anything on purpose. But Bubbles wasn't there, and I was having to try to keep up, And I was dumping the mud, the cement and the sand and everything before it was really thoroughly mixed, okay? Well, what creates that is now you got a sand pack, and it'll go up through the hose, and the thing's still pumping and pumping and pumping, but it's a sand pack. It's not going anywhere. And my old man would have to shut it off. And he was so pissed. He came down off the scaffold. God damn you could kill someone up here. I go, what'd I do, Dad? What'd I do? And he said, that was a sand pack. You got to let this stuff mix. I go, Dad, I'm trying to keep up with you, man. I can't. I dumped it. I'm sorry. He goes, well, watch this. Come up on the scaffold. And, if that hose blows apart, it knocks someone 3-4 stories off the scaffolding and kill them. Yeah. And they would have to get, sledgehammers and beat the sand pack, unhook it at the connection, and then, 4 or 5 guys would have to stand on the hose, and when it went through, it would just, and I go, I see what you mean, Dad, I'm very sorry. I go, you know what, I'm going to shut the machine down here if it's not mixed up, but you can't be yelling at me, man. I'm just a kid. I'm 16, 17 years old. I'm trying to keep up. I don't have Bubbles helping me, today, and so I'll never forget that as long as I live.
Most of us, Jimmy, get yelled at for not holding the flashlight in the right place, and you're getting yelled at, and people's lives are in danger. Hey, listen, while we're talking about it, we were talking about training. There was at some point, Yamaha actually hired you to go to Japan and train some of the riders from their factory. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, well, after my racing career, like I said, I finished up, I would do a lot of international events. Mm-hmm. You talked about Canada or whatever. I won the Montreal Supercross 2 years in a row, 88 and 89. And, it was a funny story with that. They paid £1 of gold to win it, right? So I'm a kid from, the United States, and Pierre Carbet was the promoter, and I'm up there, and he's counting out the gold. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he only counts out me 12. And I looked at him, I go, well, Pierre, it's 16 ounces to a pound. I'm missing 4. He goes, no. Gold is measured in troy ounces. 12 troy ounces equal a pound. And I didn't know this. I trust him. But sure enough, it was right or whatever. But, I still have that gold, by the way. And I think it's at $2,000 a pound now. And I have a couple, or 2,000 an ounce.
An ounce, Jimmy. Yeah, an ounce.
Yeah, but back then it was like 400 or something like that, 300 or 400. But anyhow, I did a lot of those international events all over the world. And then Yamaha came to me and they said, look, we want you to ride a couple of these Mickey Thompsons. It's a new series that Mickey Thompson's starting. It's got the off-road trucks, Ivan Stewart, Walker Evans, guys like that. Jimmy Johnson was in a buggy or whatever at that time, and Ricky Johnson was driving a truck. And anyhow, so you run the track backwards. So, like, they would have nice ski jumps to land and would drop off. So we ran it backwards. I mean, McGrath rode them. Tyson Volan, Ryan Hughes, a lot of guys rode these things, and I was kind of towards the end of my career, but I was able to win back-to-back championships in 88 and 89 for that, but Yamaha wanted me to ride that, and I said, sure. It kept my career going from 88 to 93, and 93, that's when I retired, but you talk about getting paid, so if you won your heat race, you started on the back row, 20 guys in the main event, 2 up front, 2 behind, 2, all the way back, and you'd have streamers on the back of your helmets. And that was to let the crowd know that, hey, the 2 back guys in 19th and 20th, they're the ones that, won the heat races. And each guy you came through, you made more money. And I don't think, I might have won 1 or 2 coming from the back, but it was so hard. A lot of those guys would finish 4th or 5th, and they'd be, 6th in line, and I'd be way back. I'd look at them and go, gosh, dang it, look at those guys, man. That's going to be, got my work cut out for him. But even though I didn't win, I would make more money than the guy who won the event. So there again, I was pretty crafty on making that. So anyhow, so I get done with that. I'm done with my racing career. And I'm sitting around twiddling my thumbs, watching the nationals, going, oh, it's 1 o'clock. I'd be lining up for my first moto or whatever. And I'm just, kind of depressed. You talk about guys that go through this and emotionally on what happens, and it's hard. Yeah. When you've been brought up since you were on a motorcycle at 5 years old and, till now, and you're retired and you're not racing, and yeah, you've made all this money and you've bought homes and invested right and everything. You're just sitting around twiddling your thumbs, and I hated it. Well, I got a call from Tad O'Connell, my old buddy. He was back in Japan, but that's one of the guys that backdoored me bikes in 1979. He called me and says, hey, Jim-san, we wanted you to we want to send a couple riders over to you, and we want you to train them, and we want you and your dad to take them around to the Supercrosses and the Nationals. Man, I was jumping for joy off of that couch when I got that call. It was awesome to be able to, get back into the racing program again. I don't have to sit around on Sundays and Saturday nights, So worked with Koji Okahara, and he rode a lot of the outdoors and nationals, but my best student was Takeshi Koikeda. Just talked to him last night, as a matter of fact, as I was cleaning out some of the garage. I found some of his old stickers and autograph stock and everything. So I still keep in touch with him when I go to Japan. I still go to Japan, once a year or so. Anyhow, that worked out well. It was a learning curve for me because I didn't know how to work with egos, and different guys, because I was that guy. And when you were in races and stuff, like when I was riding, you really don't know what the mechanics and other people around you are feeling because, you're on the other side. You're the one throwing your leg over the bike. Well, I'm not throwing my leg over no more. So when they would succeed and have, a 10th place finish or whatever, some goal that we had achieved in their goal, and we got it. Now I understood what all the mechanics and everybody, the team was. Like when you're a rider, it's you and the bike, but you have a team, and you really don't know what that team puts in until you're on the other side of that. And now I was on the other side of it, but it was hard. I mean, Koji, he really wasn't a good development rider. We'd be at Corona at the Yamaha test track, and we'd have all kinds of different setups, different cylinders and stuff. And I remember one time we were there, and we were testing stuff, and one cylinder hit pretty hard, and he didn't like it. He liked the other cylinder that was kind of mellow, and the next round was Pasadena in the Rose Bowl. Well, I've raced there a bunch, and I know how Pasadena is. It sits down below, the moisture's in the ground, it's going to be great traction. And he wanted the cylinder that didn't quite hit as hard. And I go, okay. I think the other one's going to work better for you, Koji, but, that's okay. If that's what you want, we'll put it on there. So I told my dad, I said, hey, bring that other cylinder that I like that hits harder, because I think after the first practice, we're going to have to do a fire drill, and we're going to have to change that cylinder out, because I just don't think this one, it's too flat. It's just not going to be enough for the triples. And sure enough, the first practice he went out, he's kind of coming up short on all the triples and stuff. And I go, God, I knew it, So he comes back in. I go, hey, Koji, for the next practice, can we put on that other cylinder that I like? So we did a fire drill. There's not much time in between. And, nowadays, thank God, it was a two-stroke. It was a four-stroke. I don't know if we could do it. But anyhow, we changed out the cylinder, went out the next practice session, and the first jump he hits, he over-jumps it. But he's got a big smile on his face when he came back in. He got it down after, a while. And I said, look, Koji, you're going to have to trust us. That's why Yamaha Japan hired us, because I know all these tracks. My dad knows all these tracks. When you succeed, we succeed. We're not going to have you put something underneath you that's not going to succeed, because it makes us look bad. So I go, you got to have a little bit of trust in us, Koji. And, at one point early in that year, he kept changing handlebars and fork positionings and this and that, and he kept complaining of arm pump. So I said, look, we're done. We're going to put a handlebar and a setting, and we're going to go out to the desert, and we're going to ride all day. The next 2 days, we're going to go out and play ride. And you're going to get used to that setup. Because when you have a bar that sweeps back a little bit or sweeps up or whatever, and you're changing those in between practices and stuff, it's not fair on your arms, and your shoulders.
Yeah.
You need the consistency. So we were able to come through that. And then another time I remember, I was trying to work with him on our course, and I speak a little bit of Japanese, not a lot, but I can get around in the country by myself. But back then, I really didn't speak that much. But we had Shibata from Dirt Cool Magazine. He was there with us, and he was interpreting and helping us out because he was doing a story on Koji. And he really wasn't listening, and he didn't know who I was, because I'm older than him and this and that. And so I told him, I go, look, Koji, I can't go 20 laps anymore, but I sure got 5 laps in me on a Supercross track. I'm going to suit up, and we're going to have a race. If you beat me, then I go back to booking flights, making sure you got enough parts, paying the salary, paying the bills, all that, I'll go back to managing. But if I beat you, I still do all that other stuff. But you got to listen to me as a riding coach because I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Well, we had a race, and I came in, and I put the bike on the stand, had my helmet off, sitting on the back of the box van when he came riding in. I looked him square in the eye, and I said, "You ready to go to effing work now?" And, you know, he had a piece of humble pie. You know, he didn't know I could, you know. And I said, "Look, like I said, I'm just here to help you, buddy." You know, and but he was a real workhorse. I mean, I'd have to detune him on training. He would be running 10 miles every day. You know, that's how Koji was the old school Japanese guy, like must do. You know, but I had to kind of tone him down a little bit. You know. And,
did he have a successful career after that, Jim? I'm not really familiar with the guy.
Yeah, he was good. He had top 10 finishes, or not top 10, top 15 in the Supercrosses and stuff. But he only lasted a little bit because Las Vegas, I'll never forget, the next national, and I just had started kind of broadcasting for Prime Network in the outdoors, and the first outdoor was Hangtown, and they had the last national at, the last Supercross in Las Vegas. And I'm up in the stands, and he's in the heat race, right? And he got a great start. He's second right behind Stanton. And he comes around, and they had watered the track because it's hot and dry. You know, it's May, you know, so you know how Vegas is in May. So they watered the track so it's real greasy. But Koji's elbow comes up pretty high and just hammers the throttle instead of rolling it on, right? And he comes up short. And I'm with Robert Hansen, Bob Hansen's dad, and we're good buddies. And I said, "Shit." And he goes, "What?" And I go, "Man, I hope Koji the next lap when he comes around, he doesn't put his elbow up higher and hammer the throttle because he's going to come up short. It's greasy out there, you know." And I told him, you know, "Be careful. You're the first heat. You know, they just watered the track. It's going to be like snot, you know." And sure enough, the elbow came up, and he came so short on the jump that he faced it with his front wheel. Didn't crash. So I immediately hauled butt out of the stands and went down to, you know, where the ambulance was there. And that is all, it was just an ambulance. It wasn't the Alpine Stars mobile medical unit like these guys have nowadays. Well, he busted both of his wrists. And he hit so hard that the crossbar went down later. As we found out, you had to cut the crossbar off to get a wrench on to take the bolts off, to get the handlebars off, my dad said. But he hit so hard, he was in the ambulance. And it was hot there, and the EMT gal was there, and I kept smelling, you know, like shit. You know, I kept smelling. Man, somebody's got really bad BO. You know, I'm thinking in the van here. So I go. You don't have to transfer him. Get his wrist stable. I'll take him to the hospital. So I'm walking with him, and I don't smell that anymore. So I go, it must be somebody had bad BO or something in the ambulance with. So I get him back to the truck, and I go, "Well," my dad's there. I said, "Man, we got to get his gear off or whatever, you know. I don't want to take him to the hospital, all this other stuff." So he's sitting on the back, and I get ready to pull his boots off, and, just shit. I'm thinking, God, now he's got a shit, man. What am I going to do, you know? But he was telling me something else. When I pulled his boots off, there was shit in his boots. When he hit so hard, his stomach bent that crossbar pad, the bar down so much that everything he had in his stomach, it just came out. So I went, now what am I going to do? I can't take him like this. So I had to take his boots off. I had to take his pants off. I got him in between the two box vans. I told the old man, I go, "Fire up the parts, the
power washer?
The washer, yeah, the washer for the bike." I'm standing 6 feet away because I didn't want the spray to really hurt him, you know.
Yeah.
So I take the brush, you know, the long brush with the soap in the bucket. I'm washing underneath where his, you know, junk is and his butt. I get him all cleaned up and everything, and I took him to the hospital. And so then it gets better. Go to the hospital. He's got 2 busted wrists. I call Yamaha Japan because the time change, that was during the day, the next day on Sunday there. I said, "What do you want to do? Do you want him to have surgery here, or do you want me to bring him home?" They said, "No, I'll bring him home here because, you know, he's okay to travel, you know, his wrists or, you know, this, that." Okay, great. So I'll book a flight for Monday morning, and I'll get him home on Sunday. So I asked Koji, I said, you want to go home? We had two vans because we were going to go up to Carson City and train in the altitude and then go over to Hangtown. So I had a regular van and I had the race truck. The race truck has a sleeper in it. So I asked Koji, you want to go with my dad? And that way you can lay down in the back. No, I go with you, Jim. So, okay, no problem. I send my dad to get him going. I get Koji out. I've got to brush his teeth, feed him and everything because both of his wrists are broke. He's all bandaged up. I mean, casted up or whatever, you know. So we start driving, and we only get 30 minutes out of Vegas. And he's, he's in pain.
He's got a crap again.
No, I go, what am I going to do? He's not going to drive 5 hours back to LA. So I turned around, and I had motorcycles in my van. I went to the airport, parked my van, got him on a flight, flew home, had Melissa pick us up at Burbank Airport, and she's a nurse. And I said, look, you know, take care of Koji. Take me back to the airport, flew back to Vegas, picked up my van because I can't leave it there. I'm leaving the next day to go to Japan.
Yeah.
So I drove my van back all day, got back, got situated, got up in the morning, caught a flight, flew all the way, 12 hours back to Japan, landed in Japan, and got him in there and everything. And, I mean, when he had to go to the bathroom, I had to, you know, get him up, open the door, take his pants down, help him, you know, and go pee and, eat and everything. So, it's the fun life of being a race team manager.
Hey, let's get back to your career a little bit here, Jim. I remember a funny story where I think it was where you were racing in Panama. Your bike got lost. Your bike never made it to Panama, and you had to grab a stock XT350 off a showroom floor.
Yeah. Philip Morris sponsored us a lot when we went down there to the Dominican Republic, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Panama, all that stuff. It was excellent. David, Panama, just outside Panama City, and like I said, my bike never made it, and that's what happens sometimes when you ship a bike, you know. And it happened another time in India when I went over there. The bike never. But anyhow, so there was a Yamaha dealer that was displaying motorcycles, at the race, and he didn't have two strokes, but he had a XT350 or whatever it was, and I got on that thing and I was leading it, and after 2 laps it broke. It wasn't serviced. It didn't have any oil in the motor. Because it was a display bike. It was just on display. But, the promoter knew that I tried everything in my, so I still got paid my start money and stuff, which was good. And, I don't want to, say, oh, well, my bike didn't show up and be one of those type of guys. Well, I guess I don't have to ride. I'm going to make it. I made the effort to ride. I'm just glad I didn't get hurt on a double or something. The thing seized, up on a straightaway. I felt it kind of slowing down or whatever, and I said, oh, man, something's wrong with this thing, and it locked up. So I was able to grab the clutch real quick, and, no oil.
Hey, Jimmy, we've heard of racers, especially GP guys. They race in all different countries throughout Europe, North America. You, on the other hand, traveled to some really unusual places in your career, including, as I mentioned earlier, Panama, Guam, and India, just to name a few. What was your favorite country to race in outside the USA? And were there any places where you raced and didn't feel safe because of anything that may have been going on in that country?
Yeah, I think one of my probably favorite places would have been Australia. Rode a lot in Australia, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and Philip Christensen was the promoter, and I'm still friends with him today, and he really took good care of us. Although on the flight down there, he had Air New Zealand. He had as a sponsorship, so we had to go LA to Tahiti to Auckland to Sydney to Adelaide. And I told him that was one of the first trips. I said, "What, Phil? You trying to wear me out so the Australians win, man?" I go, "This is the hardest flight I've ever taken, man. Next time I want to go Qantas, just directly from LA to Sydney or whatever." But I think those were probably one of the better places. But like I said, all of Europe, Sweden, I really liked. Finland, were great places. Spain, Valencia, Barcelona, Ibiza, Madrid, those were all good places. Germany, had traveled all over. India, that was a unique experience. But I think probably one of the worst places, and I still go down there. Ho Chi is a good friend of mine, and I just went and saw him for his 60th birthday last year. But Guatemala, went down there in the '82 or whatever, and when I first started going down there, Yeah, a lot of gorillas were up in the mountains, and there was kids on the starting line, 16-year-old kids, 15-year-old kids with M16s and stuff. Just, I'm thinking, man, if my bike backfires, man, one of these kids are gonna get scared and start shooting people, thinking the gorillas are coming down. But and the water. I got sick one time down there. They had these jugs of water, and it was purified, but this jug wasn't purified, and I drank that, and I just, it was bad news. But back then, I mean, nowadays it's good but you couldn't even have salad down there because they rinsed the salad with their water, and their water wasn't purified that well, so you really had to be careful on what you ate down there and stuff. So, but I like the country in general. I mean, the history of it, Antigua, Guatemala is a really nice city, and had good times there. But that's the only place where I really felt like I was kind of a little bit, this could go sideways quick, But I was down there with Jim O'Neill, and he had a lot of distributors down there, so we were in good hands. Louis Canale was a Yamaha importer there, and he gave us bikes and everything, and Kurt Mueller, and so. But I just. That was, from a kid being from Southern California going to a third world country and seeing kids with M16s protecting us, at the gates and stuff, so the guerrillas didn't come down and steal our bikes or whatever. I'm just thinking, wow, man, this is definitely, I don't know, I was a little bit afraid,
Sure, but
But South Africa was good. I remember racing there, and with Mickey Diamond and Brian Myerscough, and all of us were down there. Jim Tarantino. Those were good times down there. I mean, in Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, all those cities raced down there, and got a chance to. Greg Albertine, when he came to the United States, he says, "Hey, man, you remember me?" I said, "Yeah, a little bit. You were on the Blue Stratos team. You were riding an 80 back. Yeah, I got a set of goggles from you and stuff and a picture. I'll never forget that." I go, no, I remember all that stuff,
Hey, Jimmy, you were on a cover of Dirt Bike magazine, I think, more than anybody else. Maybe I'm wrong, but it does seem like you're on a lot of covers during the times that you were riding. How did you land a spot there to become a test rider?
Well, that was, through Jim O'Neill. He was good friends with Rick Simon and, and Tom Webb and Paul Clipper and all those guys, and they were looking for a young kid that, wanted to come up and do crazy, whips and stuff on motorcycles. And, they had Danny Chandler. He had rode one. I think he did a cover with Jump to Mako with no gas tank on it or seat, and they just filled up the float ball and go ahead and hit it, Danny. And Danny was a great guy, he did it. And Kenny Zart, he did a lot of the stuff. But, I had a lot of great covers with him. And it's ironic that you would bring this up because Pat Kerrigan called me from High Torque just this week. I was on a mountain bike ride, and I was coming back, and he called me. He says, "Hey, we want to duplicate the first cover because our 50th anniversary is coming up, and the first cover had a Husky and a Mako on it.
Yep.
And we want maybe you and Jim O'Neill, if you guys could do it, and we want to duplicate that. We'll put one of you guys on either the Husky or the Mako, and the other one we want on a modern bike." And I said, "Well, give me the modern bike." But they want to just show the 50 years on how the bikes have changed and all that, do a story on that. And so I said, "Yeah, put it together. I'm more than happy to." I mean, I think if it wasn't for dirt bike, I made a lot of my sponsors and everything knew I did a lot of those covers and stuff. And I'm talking about O'Neill, and I'm talking about Arai and Scott, all these people that every time you're on a cover, I mean, that's you can't buy that advertisement. Oh, I mean, you could buy it, but it's a lot of money. But if you sponsor a guy that's on the covers, and I mean, I would do whatever it took. I mean, I remember one time I mowed Tom Webb's yard on Roscoe and and trimmed his bushes there. He goes, "You don't have to do that." I said, "No, man, I just want to look a little overgrown. You're pretty busy with writing stories and taking pictures, and you guys helped me out, so I wanted to help you out." But funny thing is I felt really bad at Rick's house one year. It was an accident or whatever, but I ran over one of his dogs.
Oh.
I was backing out of the driveway, and it was at night. Didn't see the dog, and I think it was tripod, they called him, because he only had 3 legs. I think one of the legs he got hit by a car. So he was always in the way of cars. And so, Rick said, "Don't feel bad, man. That's like the fourth time that dog's been hit or ran over by a car." And I don't know if I killed him. I can't remember if he passed away later, or whatever. But I just felt so bad that, nowadays I always, if I see a dog around, hey, grab that little dog, man, pick him up.
Yeah.
I don't want to have that ever happen again. But no, those guys were good guys. I know John Miller was around, Mike Webb. They would come out on some shoots with us when we had a test to do 5 motorcycles or whatever. But I think that also helped me out in my career because I got a chance to ride all the different variations of motorcycles. And when I was doing development and testing for Yamaha, I would remember like, hey man, the Honda worked good here, and we're lacking in this department for Yamaha. So it gave me a chance to ride all the different brands, and also I got a chance to work with Roger DeCoster. He was worked for High Torque at one point before he got into the team managing and stuff after his Honda career, and it was good to work with Roger and stuff.
So whose idea was it? You jumped a Harley one time, like a full-dress super glider or some shit.
Yeah, that was Rick Simon. Yeah.
Where the hell did that come from? Why did he have you do that?
He got an idea in Harley in Wisconsin. Gave him a full dresser, and he goes, "Hey, I got a new stunt for you to do." I go, "What's that, Rick?" And they always had crazy things for me to do on motorcycles, and I said, "Well, what is it?" He goes, "I want you to jump a full dresser Harley Davidson." I go, "Where? I can't do no double with this thing." He goes, No. Up by my house in Granada Hills or wherever it was, they were grading out house pads. So you could be on a flat pad, and then the next one would be a 4-foot, pad to go up to the next flat pad.
Right.
So I'd hit that.
Yeah.
And I'd jump, and I would land, and, I said, "Rick, we're going to bust this." Harley don't care, man. Harley doesn't care. Anything could happen. It had running boards and all that stuff. But, first time I jumped, it was like, oh, my gosh. It was like somebody just dropped me down off of a single-story house with all this weight on me. And it just saddlebags started blowing off and handlebars. I think we only got about maybe 5 jumps, and that was it. The bike started to... Yeah, it was just disintegrating. But, those are fun times.
I bet they were. Hey, Jimmy, you do a great job on Race Day Live. I'm always impressed with how confidently you could speak about the old days when you get a guy like Brad Lackey on there. Then you also have a great rapport with all these young racers too. How'd the opportunity come about to be an announcer on Race Day Live?
Well, I've been doing it for about 20 years now, somebody, it started, when I was kind of working with the Japanese. They wanted me to do the main event, and I said, yeah, I could do it because, if my rider's not in the main event, or if he is, I can watch up here from a great vantage point and keep an eye on him. It's a better place in the stands. But Larry Huffman, he kind of got me into that when I would go to Europe or whatever. I'd call in and call to his Sunday night radio show, and he goes, Jim, after your racing career, you should probably think about getting into broadcasting. I go, well, I don't know, Larry. I mean, it's okay, and this and that. But anyhow, it came together, and I was happy to do it. Any time I could do it, like when I was racing, Arena Cross Series for my kid or whatever, or, riding Supercross with the promoter, hey, you want to do a TV spot, at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime I can get national coverage for the sport I love, Supercross, motocross, or whatever, I was more than willing to do it. And I could talk and articulate, what I was trying to speak to the people about. Sure. And, it just came from there.
Now, every week we see you at the pre-race thing, and you're talking to guys after practice, and well, he's gone, whether it's Dungy or Cooper Webb or whoever it may be. Have you ever run into any situations where the guy just blanks out or he doesn't know what he's talking about, or the situation gets uncomfortable between you and one of those guys?
No, never that, because, first of all, I've been there and done that, so I think I have the respect of the guys they know, and I know when to go up and ask a question or what question to ask, because, obviously, if you ask something and the guy's pissed off, you're going to get a bad answer.
Sure.
You're going to have a bad taste in the mouth, and I'm real respectful of the rider's time and place. The only one, you mentioned Dungy, Oakland Supercross, he blew me off on the podium on the interview.
Oh.
So I told my camera guy, Dave Arnold, not Dave Arnold from Honda, but Dave Arnold that works for us.
Uh-huh.
I go, let's go up to the truck. So we went up to the truck, and he's breaking down the race with his Mike Webb and everybody else, and it's raining. And we got an umbrella, and, it's the end of the day, man. We put in a 16-hour day, and I'm waiting and knocked on the door, and he, give us one more minute. Okay, well, a minute turned into 5 minutes, 5 minutes turned into 10, knock on the door again. Yep, one more minute, and kept going, and they obviously had a lot to talk about. I mean, he didn't win, but he was third, so I don't know. But I wish they would have just said, hey, look, we're not going to do the interview. Okay, great. And we leave. But we waited. And I'm a type of a guy where I don't quit. But I quit that time. After, 30 minutes outside in the rain, we left. I go, Dave, let's go. We're out.
Jimmy, you've been doing Race Day Live for 20 years?
Yeah.
Wow, I
Yeah.
didn't realize it was that long. Now,
Yeah.
you've also had some experience in Hollywood too, where you were like a stunt coordinator for the motorcycle stuff on a couple of movies that I know of. I mean, you had to teach Ray Liotta how to ride, and you also did some stuff in the Italian Job. How difficult was it? I mean, Ray Liotta had never ridden a bike before.
No, never a stunt coordinator, but maybe wrangling us some guys, for different shoots. Like I remember up in Canada, I had to wrangle up a few guys, like 8 guys. I remember Mickey Diamond was one of the guys, and David Castillo. But Jack Gill was the coordinator, and it was Ray Liotta was Wild Hogs. Mm-hmm. And he says, look, I need you to work with Ray, and he's never ridden a bike before. I go, okay, well, what's the script? What are we doing here? He says, well, he's got to ride a Harley. We got to get him to ride in and out of some shots and this and that. And I go, okay. And he had never ridden a bike. And I went, oh, no, what am I going to do? So I went out to Jack's place, and I brought out a bunch of different bikes. I brought out a TTR 90, which has no clutch, but at least just to see. And Ray's kind of a taller guy, but I wanted to get him on there and had him all geared up. And then from there, we went to a 125 two-stroke, 125 two-stroke, went to a 250F. 250F went to a TT 500, a little bit more weight, and then we got him up to, I think, a Virago or something, the 800cc Virago, just to try to work his way up. But I'll never forget, if anybody who's listening rides any of those centrifugal clutches, those 90s, if you push down on the shifter or push up, it's like you're in neutral. Yeah. Well, Ray put his foot on the shifter, and he was going down the road, and he wasn't going that fast, but he put it on there, and he went to go, and it's just going, and it's in neutral, right? Well, I'm trying to run after him because I know what's going to happen. And he's got the bike wide open, and he moved his foot, and it went into gear, and he looped out. Mm. And lucky it was only on the 90. The first, I ran up. I go, Ray, you all right? You all right? I'm thinking, oh, my God, the production company, man, Jack's going to kill me. I just hurt Ray. And, he's one of the leads in this thing. And he was okay. And I go, Ray, whatever you do, man, if it's not going, don't hold the throttle wide open. Yeah. There's something that we did wrong, and you notice I said we. I can't say you. We did wrong because I'm his teacher. So I said, so I told him that. And at that point, he was riding good enough, and it was a little bit of a hindrance because of his feet and where the foot peg was. So we moved up, and I got him to ride in and out of the shots. But, yeah, he's a good guy. And, yeah, the Italian Job. There's been a lot of guys. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I did a lot of stuff for Matthew McConaughey, a lot of commercials and things like that. But, yeah, it's been a good career in Hollywood, too. Yeah.
What about that?
I was fortunate enough to have a lot of friends that, are coordinators and in it. And like I said, the Epper family, Richard Epper and those guys, Arlene and his sister and mom, Jeannie, she used to double for Wonder Woman and all that. So they like third generation stunt people. So they got me in the business.
I see.
I'm fortunate for those guys they got me in it. And a lot of ex-racers, you know, John Haley and Eddie Mulder, all those guys are dirt trackers. They got into the business, and, you know, Paul Lane and Sean Lane, I used to ride with them in Indian Dunes, you know, they were in the business. So we had a lot of people that were in it, and it just was a good transition. It's ironic, Joe, that I used to get paid to stay on a motorcycle, and then I got paid to crash them.
Hey, Jim, you know, speaking of crashing and different things and riding aggressively, over the past few years in particular, we've seen some aggressive riding in Supercross. How do you feel about fines, suspensions, reprimands? I don't want to say Dylan Ferrandis, but I just did. And how do you feel about, you know, what's going on there and how these guys are riding?
Well, put it this way, I wouldn't want John Gallagher's job. He's the referee that makes a lot of those decisions.
Yeah.
And whatever decision he's going to make, somebody's going to be mad, whether it be Christian Craig or Dylan Ferrandis or whoever. But I always thought that they should have a committee, and I always thought that they should do it not on the night, like NBA or Major League Baseball or NFL or whatever. They don't throw down the fine or the penalty the day of the game.
Yeah.
They wait, they review tapes, and they have a committee. And then they review what it's going to be, the penalty. But I always thought there needed to be 5 guys and the majority wins. So you have an AMA official, you have an FIM official, you have a team manager, you have an old racer like me or anybody else, and you have somebody else in the industry. And all 5 of you guys need to figure out what it is. And I always thought the AMA rule book should be written out that, you know, what is the penalty? There is never no, like, price next to it. Like, if you take out a guy or something, and you know, they just make it up as they go, you know, what the penalty is and stuff. And I always thought they needed to change that. But, I mean, I'm an aggressive rider when I was riding. I like aggressive riding up to a certain point. I mean, there's blatant takeouts, and there's, you know, I was taught, you know, when you're racing, if you can't see anybody out of the corner of your eye,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to drop down into the lower line, you can. You're not taking out a guy's wheel. You know, there was another time when I was, Mike Kidd was mad at me that I took out a rider that I wasn't trying to take him out. And, you know, we explained that after, but all 3 of us went into this 90 bowl turn on a tight track. Leader was up high, second place was there, and third. So I see that the second place guy is going to go up and hit, you know, the first place guy, and I'm thinking, okay, it's a big bowl turn. They're going to collide together, and they're going to tumble down, so I'm going to stay low, right? Well, the kid went up in second, and he squared it off, and he came right back down in front of me, right where I was at, and I hit him.
Mm-hmm.
And there was nothing I could have done. You know, and, you know, they said it was my fault. I go, Mike, it wasn't my fault. I was down low. He squared up. I thought he was going up high, and you can see from the tape where I was at, I was outside, and I dropped down because I saw those 2 guys go up high. He squared off, and he ran into me. I go, how could that be my fault, you know? And I think that happened on Dungy and James Stewart in Anaheim one time. Dungy squared down and ran into the back of, or ran into Stewart, or vice versa. I can't remember what happened, but
yeah.
I mean, you know what? Something's blatant. You know what I mean? When a guy's in the corner, he's coming out, and a guy comes in and just T-bones him and cleans him out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they both go down, in my opinion, then that's probably not a good move when you both go down.
Right.
You know, if you go down and you brake slide into somebody, and you're ahead of them by 3/4 of the bike, and your rear wheel touches his front wheel, and he's not smart enough when he's up high to look out of the corner of his eye before he drops the bike down, you got to keep that bike straight up and down. You see a lot of times guys will come underneath guys and they won't turn down. They'll keep the bike up so they won't get taken out. You know, but if you're that stupid and you left the door open and a guy comes underneath you and you're squaring down on him and you hit him and you go down, how can you say it's that guy's fault? You left the door open. He took advantage of it, you know. But
yeah,
I mean, there's certain blatant, you know, like yesterday I was watching the Nationals and I saw Osborne coming through the pack, and I think he got into Max Anstey. But that was just a racing. It was so muddy and everything, and he lost control. His foot's off, and he hit him. They both didn't go down, but he made the pass. He wasn't trying to take the guy out, you know. So it's just very hard, you know. And I thought that, they need to make some changes. And I mean, I think the fans like the racing and rubbing and everything. I mean, look at that great photo of Jimmy Weinert and Tony DiStefano.
Oh, yeah.
In that one corner. I mean, yeah, Jimmy's coming in underneath him, and I mean, that's how racing was.
Well, what about the jumps, though, Jim? You think it's getting a little out of hand? They should tame things down a little bit?
Definitely on the jumps. I mean, you cross over on me on a jump, and we got problems. And it's not going to be down on the track. It's going to be back in the pits.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really.
Nowadays they got cameras and stuff. You got to be careful. But yeah, you can't cross over in front of a guy. It's too dangerous. You're jumping 65-foot triples. You're 30 feet up in the air or whatever it is, and you take somebody out over a jump. That's not cool.
No, Jim, I wasn't referring to a guy changing lines in midair over a double or a triple. I'm just talking about the construction of the track in general. Do you think these jumps have gotten out of hand in general with this do or die thing of it's either you're going to do the triple or you're never going to win the race? Do you think the jumps have gotten out of hand as far as a builder building a track?
Yeah, I think that from what I've seen, Feld's trying to work on that, but it's these motorcycles, man. To be honest, Joe, these things are incredible. I mean, the torque that they have. I mean, it's just you would never see it on a two-stroke because two-strokes only got a certain capability.
Sure.
And if you can, keep a rhythm lane and keep the power on, but if you make a mistake in the rhythm lane with a four-stroke and you seat hop some and grab a handful, you can jump it. But, yeah, I mean, I would like to see the tracks where I think everybody can do something on it, but the rhythm lanes are the hardest ones for me because you make a mistake in the rhythm lane and you're going to pay dearly.
Yeah. Well, what about the salary of these guys, Jim? I mean, stick and ball athletes are making big dough, top race car drivers, the motorcycle road racers, obviously. For the risk they take, you think the Supercross guys are being paid fairly?
Nope.
Well, where does
they
that?
Need more money.
Well, yeah.
They need more money.
Where does that salary?
Do you know what like a 450 main event winner makes?
No.
AMA?
Well, I mean,
what they pay?
No. How much?
$12,000.
$12,000 to win a main.
That's it.
Okay.
The bonuses come from the factories at $100,000 to win. So yeah, the bonuses are where these guys make their money, but still at $100,000, it's not enough money. I mean, you got to remember if you make $100,000, that's only really $70,000 because the other $30,000 is going to go to the government.
Of course.
When you do your taxes. So I've always been a firm believer in that. I think the promoters should kick in $1 a ticket or something for the purse money or whatever to try to raise the purses up. And it's even horrible in the 250 class. I think it's not even half. I think it's like $4,000 to win a main event in the 250 class, and I think it's 50 or so usually what the factories pay to win there and for a bonus.
We were talking a little bit earlier, too, about kids jumping from 80 cc's to 250s, and with some manufacturers bringing 125s back into the mix. Do you think Supercross should have a 120? See, here's what I'm going to give you my idea, and then you tell me what you think. I thought maybe just like they have the East Coast, West Coast 250 thing, and where a guy's on a budget and he just races half the country. Well, why couldn't we do something similar to that with 125s and then not have so many qualifiers, so many last chance qualifiers, and get some 125 racing in there? What about that, Jim?
I think it's the time frame that they have for Supercross. When the show starts till it finishes, there's only a 3-hour window there to get everything in there. I like the idea of having some of the kids come in on a 125 two-stroke. Yeah. Maybe earlier in the day. Like they do track walk at 10 o'clock, and then they do practice at 12, maybe cutting some of the qualifiers, or even just let the 125 guys go, even if they're not racing. Give them a practice. Let them out there to experience it. So when they make that transition in that 250 class, they at least kind of know, what to expect. But the other thing is, all the manufacturers don't make it. Honda doesn't have a 125. So if you're bringing up Yoder Hunter, he's coming up on for the Geico Honda team. where do you put him? Honda doesn't have a 125 two-stroke. Cowie doesn't have a 125 two-stroke.
Yeah.
Suzuki doesn't have one. The only manufacturers that make them are Yamaha and Husky, KTM, and probably Gas. Maybe Beta has one also. But I think that, something like that, they should have something like that. But like I said, they could do that also, and Feld did a great job with their Supercross Futures class that they ran last year, and they didn't run any this year. Well, they ran a couple, and then before COVID came around, but they haven't been taming down the tracks because a lot of the guys had said, "Hey, this is too tame." I'm okay with it when I ride I'm almost 60, and I had to ride the 40 class a couple years ago in Tempe, but not Tempe. Where the stadium's at
in Arizona?
Glendale, Glendale, Arizona. But I was okay to ride that, because it was pretty tamed down. But nowadays, from what I saw, that they're not taming them down quite as much. So they're getting a chance to get the 50 cc's, the 60, the 85s, the 125 class. I think they have. They even have the 250. I saw Carson Mumford and a few guys racing those classes to get their points, to qualify for Supercross. So they're not taming those tracks down. So they would have. I would like to see, maybe strictly just a 125 class. I don't know if they have that. Now, I know I've seen in the 250 class some 125 guys riding because I've heard the two-strokes out there. So, but I just don't know if there's enough 125s around for the guys to make a class.
Yeah. Well, maybe they should make it to where those manufacturers who do make that 125, just like they have the KTM Futures, maybe a manufacturer should jump in there, whether it's Yamaha or Gas, whoever does make a 125, KTM, or maybe they should make a class for that too. I don't know. You and I could talk about this too.
The problem with that is if KTM say they did it and they had it 125 Futures class, everyone's on KTM, stock KTMs, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to get a guy like Ryder DeFrancisco or Jet Lawrence, guys or Talon? Well, Talon Volan could do it because he's on max volume Volan rather.
Max.
He could do it because he's on a KTM. But these other guys have contracts with other manufacturers that won't allow them to ride that class.
Yeah.
So you basically only got the Orange Brigade. Orange Brigade, yeah. Orange Brigade guys that could compete in that class.
Yeah.
So that would be out. Whereas if you got the 50 guys, they don't have factories helping them out at this point, so it's just a fun thing. Go out there and have it. But when you put all 125 KTMs on there, you're not going to get the guys that are supported by Yamaha and Honda and Suzuki, Kawasaki, and Husqvarna to ride that bike. It's just they have contracts and they have to be on that brand that they're sponsored by.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't work.
Yeah, and they've got to stay loyal to that too. One year I was up at Hangtown and I had one of my vintage Kawasaki's that I restored up there, and I happened to have the bike in the lobby of the hotel, and I asked Marvin Muscan to take a picture with me and the bike. He said, I cannot. This is a Kawasaki. I said, take it easy there. All right, I guess.
Marvin's a good guy.
He is.
He can handle that a little bit better. Yeah, that'd be cool. I wish I could do it, but KTM's really a stickler on that, and I would get docked, some of my pay if I'm taking a picture. If you'd like to take a picture next to my bike, we could do that, or something like that, But yeah, he's pretty short and dedicated to, he'll tell you just how it is, like I said.
Well, hey, Jimmy, we're just about out of time for today, and I wanted to open up to you to either recap anything we've already talked about, maybe you thought of some things along the way, or to give you an opportunity to express anything that may be on your mind regarding motocross, supercross, and anything that's happening within the industry.
Yeah, did we hit all the questions? I can't remember. Did we get everything?
I think we did get everything, and we even added got a few more. So if there was anything else that was on your mind today about the sport, about the season that got cut short, or what we could expect for 2021 as far as Supercross.
Yeah, I feel bad for some of the guys, I mean, I texted Zach Osborne yesterday. I said, hey, man, great job, back-to-back, keep the ball rolling. He says, hey, thanks, Jim, and, I can't even go to a national, I'm just worried about COVID, before I went and visited my grandson, I had to have a test again, where they don't want, he's only 14 months, and my son, James, he says, hey, you got to have a test before you come back here. So, with COVID, everybody's in the same boat, as far as the outdoor nationals. There's only 9 rounds. They cut 3 rounds off. Normally there's 24 motos. Well, there's only going to be 18 motos this time. Everybody knows that's the way it was starting out. I just hope that it doesn't get worse as the season progresses and some of these other people cancel their events and say, okay, well, we're running 8 rounds now.
Yeah.
And then they have to get it done because the factories are having their new 2021s come in and they got to start testing for Supercross. But who knows what's going to happen with Supercross next year? Like out west here, I know you're in New Jersey, but out west they already canceled the Rose Parade.
Yeah.
And that the Supercross is a couple days after that. I mean, I could see that 2021 they'll have a season, I guarantee it. But having a press conference like they do and presenting Eli Tomac with the championship ring and all that stuff and social distance and everything, because I've been in those every year in Angel Stadium in the Diamond Club, and it is packed. I mean, it is literally packed. So I could see that them going racing, but like they did at Salt Lake City, where they're at Anaheim for 3 rounds, and doing a Wednesday and a Saturday or something, or a Wednesday and a Sunday or whatever, and then they go down to Glendale and they do 3 rounds there, and I could see a shortened season on that. It just depends on what state, what the governor, and what the mayor and everybody of the different states say that, hey, we're allowed to do it. But I mean, and then the other thing is a promoter, I mean, they allow, yeah, sure, they get good TV money and all that stuff, but they allow a lot on the fans being there and interacting with the fan like Race Day Live.
Sure.
We have our booth this year was out intermixing with the fans and everything, which was cool. They had the, hashtag real fans go, they go to the races. But if they can't have the fans, the T-shirt sales, merchandise, all that stuff, it all hinges upon having fans there. And if you can't have fans there, then they're going to have to make budget cuts. Like, we did not do Race Day Live the last 6 rounds in Salt Lake City because of budget cuts. They just said, hey, we're going to lose our butts here, and we can't afford to have Race Day Live. Now, they did have Ricky and Ralph do the last qualifying session, for the people on the NBC Gold Pass. But, everything is up in the air, and I just hope that they find after the elections or whatever happens, they find a cure, they find a vaccination, just like the flu vaccination. You have that done every year in November or whatever. Hopefully they can get that going, and hopefully we can get together. And maybe they might say, yeah, we can have fans, but it's going to be every other seat. Like when you go to the airports, they have one seat and then they have social distance. You got to sit in you got to wear a mask, and they may have masks, where everyone has to wear a mask. And if you're eating, then you can take the mask down like on an airplane or whatever. But I'm telling you, I hope they can, because I can't handle having a mask on for 4 hours coming from Detroit.
I know what you mean, Jim, and I guess we're all in the same seat, and we're just going to have to wait and weigh it out and see how the chips fall in another couple of months. Jim, I want to really, really thank you for being my guest this morning here on Vintage Motocross Radio.
Well, I appreciate it, Joe, and keep up the good work. I looked at a lot of the great guests you've had on, Lars Lindstrom and Jimmy Weiner and all the guys and stuff. It's an awesome show that you put together, and I really like listening into a lot of the guys and a lot of the stories they have, and hopefully the people like some of the stories I had today.
I'm sure they will, Jim. Thank you once again for being my guest this morning.
All right, take care.
I'll speak to you soon. Bye. My guest this morning has been Hollywood Jim Holley. Had a lot of great stories, and I want to thank our sponsors once again. Vintco, keep the ride going. Nightmare Racing, the best reproduction plastic on the planet. Full Circle Racing, I want to thank Tom McAllister, your one-stop shop for spokes, lacing, and truing. Amsoil, Russell Waters, thank you as well. The first in synthetic oil since 1973. Preston Petty, I want to thank Paul and Patty Stainard for all they do for not only Vintage Motocross Radio, but Vintage Motocross Q&A. And of course, our latest sponsor, thank you so much, Chris Carter at Motion Pro. And I have to again thank Kirk Benke for putting this together between Jim Holley and myself. To everyone else out there, I invite you to listen to or watch my show on Wednesday night, Vintage Motocross Q&A. And if you get a moment, you can still share this video, just like you do the Vintage Motocross Q&A videos. Just go to our page, Vintage Motocross Radio, and you can share it with some of your friends and invite them to join us. Once again, thank you for listening to the show today. This is Joe Abadi. Have a great week.